Today, I'm going to tell you a story about hope. But it starts through one of the most hopeless moments of my life. 3 years ago, I had a burnout. I laid on my couch, I was exhausted, and I could barely do anything. How on earth did I end up here? Nothing of what I'd normally done worked anymore. My job in the corporate world did not fit me anymore. My relationship ended, and Amsterdam, the city where I'd happily lived for many years, also did not fit me anymore. The only thing I thought when I laid on that couch was, how do I return to work as a healthy person? I knew that if I would go back to the corporate world, I would end up where I already was, my couch. If you keep doing what you always did, you get more of the same. And I knew things had to change. So I started an experiment. My dad, crazy about boats, knew an organization nearby my house that was going to build a big ship, and they were looking for volunteers. He kept insisting, so I made an appointment with the founder, Edwin. And Edwin told me he was going to build a 17th century Dutch fluitschip, or flute. But he was not going to build it out of wood, but out of waste plastic. So many questions. Why, how, with whom, but especially why? This guy was either a genius or a complete lunatic. I hesitated, but I decided to give it a chance because I didn't have anything to lose anyway. And here I came into contact with one of the biggest social problems we face as humanity today. We have a plastic problem, a big problem. Look at the plastic soup in our oceans that suffocates the marine life, the depletion of the earth for oil, the raw material of plastic, and the microplastics that are not only in our food, but in our own physical bodies nowadays. Here I realized that my little personal story symbolized this bigger problem. We have a massive global plastic burnout. Because a burnout brings you into a state of hopelessness, of powerlessness, of disengagement. Look at the plastic problem. We see the problem, we see the effects, but we feel hopeless and powerless. And we disengage from solutions because we get stuck in our own daily habitual behavior, throwing things away. But you can't get out of a burnout, and I know I have experience. If you keep doing what you always did, you get more of the same. And here I would like to take you back to Edwin, that genius or complete lunatic that was going to build a ship out of waste plastic. From Edwin, I learned valuable lessons. His answer to the global plastic burnout is, stop throwing things away. But what are you going to do with all the waste plastic then? His reasoning, throwing it away is a waste because you can build a ship out of it, right? By the way, when I said building a ship from waste plastic, did you think they were crafting plastic bottles together with duct tape or something? So did I. But it's going to be something like this. This is the Dutch fluitschip, a 17th century cargo ship, a giant ship. And this ship brought me into a totally new world, because everything they do here is an experiment. And building this ship from recycled plastic planks and beams is their masterpiece. But I can hear you think, how is this ship going to solve our plastic burnout? Well, building this ship from recycled plastic isn't possible yet. It can't be done. The current recycled material is not stiff enough to build on this scale. If we would try today, the ship would twist and turn over the water and break in the waves. But to make this possible, Edwin is conducting experiments with the polymer industry to reinforce recycled plastic. Because if they succeed, they can not only build the flute, but they also provide sectors as construction and infrastructure a serious new building material. And then suddenly, plastic might not be a problem anymore, but it might become a solution. But how do you build a ship you can't build yet? How do you solve a global problem? How do you recover from a burnout? It all starts with one first little step. A forest doesn't fall out of the skies, it starts with little sprouts. To me, returning to work felt like building a flute. So I started with a couple of hours at the ship wharf to help Edwin with his first step. We built a small boat out of waste plastic, Edwin to discover the material in the 17th century shipbuilding craft, and I to discover my new self. And if I wanted to get out of my habitual behavior, this was actually the perfect place to do so, because there was no pressure at my work. I could do everything, but I didn't have to do anything. And I could make mistakes. In fact, if I made a mistake, Edwin would say, "Congratulations, you learned something new. Go make some coffee, we're going to celebrate it." And everybody was welcome at the wharf. People from all walks of life who would probably never meet each other, met each other here in building a boat. And all these people, like me, started their own little experiment and discovered what they were good at. But experimenting is scary. It's uncertain. You don't know what to expect. But exactly those unexpected discoveries can be of great value. Look at inventions like penicillin, the Post-it, the microwave. We all know them. And they're all the result of coincidence. So if you're open to new discoveries, you get so much more than you could ever imagine. To me, my personal experiment landed me a job with meaning at an organization that fitted me like a glove. What did I know when I took my father's advice? And regarding Edwin's experiment, where everybody thought that recycled plastic would even be too weak to build this little ship, the material proved to hold up perfectly in the construction. And the boat even survived a storm on its maiden trip to Amsterdam. But even better, because this experiment led to a new experiment with huge social impact. Because after this first boat, we decided to build a second boat. And through a partner organization, we got more and more people at the wharf who would help us build this little ship. Mainly young people with a distance to the job market and people with a refugee status. And this way a reintegration project was born. And in the safe environment of the wharf, all these people started their own little experiments and discovered their talents. And this resulted in huge personal growth. Because of the first group of 20 people, 6 of them found a job within the duration of their project. 3 decided to go back to school. And the rest made significant steps towards those future steps. Of the second group, these numbers were even higher. And these are just the numbers. Because I will never forget the moments when Jose invited his parents over and proudly showed them what he built with his own bare hands. Mohammed, who once he got the hang of his Dutch, turned out to be an incredible joker. And Dan, shy Dan, who would always stare at the tips of his shoes, one day looked up and looked me right in the eye. And all that out of a small experiment with waste plastic. Still, I will be the last person to say that experimenting is easy. It's not easy. It's very uncomfortable. You fail, you make mistakes, but you get up and you keep going. And then you're allowed to make coffee. And that's what we call the pleasure of discomfort. And sometimes I still feel hopeless and powerless. When I read that a significant part of the so-called recycled plastic in my country is being traded, shipped off to be burnt and dumped elsewhere, I get tears in my eyes. Great, those little plastic boats. But are they really going to solve our plastic problem? I would love to give you a reassuring answer today. But the honest answer is, I don't know. What I do know is that if we keep doing what we always did, we get more of the same. And that's why we built this impossible flute. Not knowing the outcome could be a reason to not start, but it should exactly be the reason to start. Because you'll be surprised by all the things you did not expect, but did achieve. Building boats with people with the distance to the job market has become our core business. And we're now building a second type of ship, a larger ship towards the flute. And where everybody says it really can't be done, the material keeps on surprising us. And because more and more people and organizations are joining our experiments, the material research for reinforcing plastic, recycled plastic, is also making progress. And meanwhile, we're building tiny houses out of waste plastic, homes for people who don't have one right now. And all that out of what we see as waste. So I want to encourage you. Start your own experiment today. Turn around your bin, become a volunteer, create your own flute, but do something you don't know the outcome of. Start small, but start today. And when it's getting really uncomfortable, you know you're in the right way.